Okay, so originally this was going to be a full-on voiceover video, but then I remember that was going to take much longer for me to edit. So I was like, your best bet is to get on camera and try not to cry at all. Now, today's video is one that it may seem to be a little bit all over the place, mainly because this is going to be fully unscripted. And I've been doing a lot more unscripted content this year in general, mainly because it makes me feel a little bit more grounded, but also it's been like easier for me to make content that way just as well. But I could not find myself to find the words to put on screen in relation to talking about grief and the way it has impacted my life within like the last 3 years, mainly when this pandemic has started, because it's something that I still feel like I can't like truly process like whatsoever. So today's video most likely will be like a one shot, like a one and done. Might not even edit this. I might just throw it on up here for y'all to see the way exactly is. So if there's no stops and pauses and takes in between this, that is why, because I want this video to be very raw, uncensored, and unfiltered. But I kind of want y'all to like understand a little bit about where I'm coming from, because I am very vulnerable in this video, I'd say, because I told myself, like, for like the last 3 months, I wanted to make another video talking about death and, like, you know, the way it's portrayed in our media, but also how we as a whole talk about death. And one thing I've just learned, like, dealing with all these deaths in my family for the last 3 years, has to be that I feel like we as a society do not talk about the subject of death well. We do not handle the concept of death well just as well. And we are very much disrespectful towards people who are grieving. I know that I have been like this in the past before too, where I have said disrespectful things about people grieving and whatnot from when I was really little till I gotten older. And mainly that was just like naivete, me not necessarily understanding shit or whatever. But now that, because it has impacted my life so much to the point where it affects me daily, but seeing the way people respond to it now, especially when it comes to like celebrities and whatnot, yeah, this is like a little discussion that I really do want to talk about, because it's not even so with how the general public responds to like celebrities and their grief, but also the way mainstream media handles the subject of grief just as well. It's a bit interesting, and I do want to talk a little bit more about that. So the first like little note that I have on here would have to be how we talk about celebrities and when they're opening up about their grief and whatnot. And one thing about a lot of celebrities is that they are known for basically, you know, putting their lives out there. Their lives are basically like their entire brand. They were lifestyle YouTubers before what a lifestyle YouTuber was. Now, I'm not going to sit on here and talk about Jada, mainly because I feel like what has been said has been said. There are other videos that y'all can click on where people are talking about Jada. Sorry, my camera cut off because it was full. The car was full. I had to delete some footage before I could actually record. I wish I did that before. But anyway, like I was saying, I don't want to sit here and talk about Jada, but I do want to talk about another person that I noticed people weren't necessarily the kindest to when it came to them opening up about their grief. And that would have to be Miss Brandy Norwood. Now, a lot of y'all know who Brandy Norwood is. A lot of y'all know her as Cinderella. A lot of y'all know her for her music. And a lot of people know her for being Moesha. Brandy is honestly a household name in this household on this pirate ship. Now, Brandy, I remember how people weren't necessarily the kindest to her when she was opening up about like the death of like her cast members and whatnot. But also, a lot of people were very nasty to her though, because I remember people were talking about something called like the Brandy Norwood curse, and people were saying like so many of the people that she's worked with have passed away, and I'm like, can we not do that, please? Can we not? Like, it's obvious that the woman is hurting right now over this, and I know that Brandy has done some things in the past and whatnot, but this is specifically about me talking about the way she has responded to the death of Whitney Houston in particular. Because I noticed this a few other times with other people that she's worked with, but specifically with Whitney Houston, because we know Whitney Houston was her fairy godmother in the Cinderella film. And seeing how so many people speak about Brandy negatively when she talks about how impacted she was by Whitney, and that's why her death hurt her so much. I really have learned over the years that I am not somebody that needs to sit here and question somebody's relationship to someone else, because I'm like, at the end of the day, I don't know these people. Like, that's one thing I feel like a lot of people don't seem to understand when it comes to like famous people, even though they put all this shit out there about themselves. They put their whole life out here for us to watch through like a spectacle. We don't know these people. That's why I'm just like, you know what? She's grieving. I'm going to let her do that, because grief affects a lot of people differently. And grief is also something that you don't necessarily ever really get over. That's one thing that I have learned in like the almost 2 years of my mom's death, and like the 1 year of like my uncle's and my aunt and my cousin's death too. It's not something that you easily can get over within like a few months or whatnot. That shit is painful, and like it impacts you. And it's not like the pain gets less and less and less painful. It's like you just figure out ways to deal with that pain. So I'm not gonna sit here and try to question what her relationship to Whitney Houston was like, because I don't know these people. Like, I don't necessarily know them. That's why I give a lot of these people grace when they become more open about depths within their family and whatnot, because at the end of the day, I don't know them. I don't know their relationship. That's not any of my concern. But seeing how people are so open to talk negatively about how, like, you know, famous people grieve over people within their lives, it really does scare me to see how y'all would speak about people that have died in your life. But speaking of Brandy, I do want to talk a little bit about like Moesha, and you guys know what Moesha is. It's basically like a coming of age story about a person named Moesha. The show starts off with her in like high school, and then she grows up and she goes to college, and we see her transition from girlhood to womanhood. It's a very frustrating show to watch at times, so keep that in mind if you ever want to give it a watch. But so much of the show, we get to see how the death of Moesha's mother impacted her, and that is the main reason why she wasn't like the biggest fan of her stepmother, because we all know that's the main reason why Moesha really didn't give a fuck about her stepmother. But also, we saw like after Moesha's mother died, we did get to see that she had a very strained relationship with her father. Like, I literally fucking hate her dad in the show. He is the fucking worst. I don't like him. But I noticed that like while I'm watching Moesha, and I noticed so much of the resentment that she had towards both her parents, but especially Dee, who's supposed to be like the new motherly figure within her life. I realized so much of her actions and her frustrations were just her being extremely hurt over the fact that her mom was dead and she was no longer in her life. And watching Moesha, like giving it a rewatch, it reminds me so much of Mindy Kaling's Never Have I Ever, with the main character being Davy, because so much of Never Have I Ever focuses on Davy and how she's basically grieving over the death of her father, with like a lot of other contributing factors that went on with her life, with, you know, the pressure to always be seen as extremely smart and, you know, being picked on and whatnot. And Davy has done some things in this show that have pissed me off, like Moesha. But at the end of the day, both of these girls are hurting. Both of these girls are making horrible ass decisions, doing the most unhinged shit, mainly because they are so hurt over the death of their parental figure. And it's extremely interesting to see, because I feel like that's the side of like grief that we don't necessarily see. I notice with our medias, particularly like, you know, Disney or whatnot, they want to show like the better side of like grief and death and whatnot. And I felt like we could have almost had that with Big Hero 6, where we saw Hero getting extremely angry because he realized that he was facing the person that was responsible for his brother's death. But then it just kind of just gets thrown away a little bit, kind of. I don't know. We never really get to see more of like the ugliness that has to do with Hiro grieving over Tadashi's death, I'd say. It's just kind of like in dedication to Tadashi Hamada and all of that shit. Mind you, I watched Big Hero 6, the series. I refuse to finish that last season, y'all. I can't do it. And we do get to see more like moments where he gets sad and whatever and all of that. But it's like I really was more interested to see more of that side of death that this company doesn't necessarily want to show us. The way a lot of family entertainment handles the subject of grief strongly needs to be improved. That's why I really did appreciate the depictions of grief in like Moesha and Never Have I Ever, because they showed all of it. They showed the extremely ugly side of how grief can affect you. Now, when I'm talking about Disney, there's two movies in particular that I really do want to talk about with its portrayal of grief and how I think they handled it like interestingly, but still like in a somewhat kind of like negative way to a certain extent. And I really want to talk about the movie Spin. I love Spin, okay? Go watch it if you haven't. It's on Disney Plus. Both of these movies are on Disney Plus. But Spin is about an Indian American girl named Rhea, and she basically like, you know, finds a new love for music after her mother's death. When I tell you, I literally watched Spin months before my mom's death. And it kind of like freaks me out a little bit because after my mom's death, I found a new love for drawing again, and that is something that I have not done since I was way younger. And seeing how Rhea ended up finding like a new love for music after her mother's death, part of the reason why she was so open to it has to do with the fact that it's just like, yeah, I'm sad about my mother dying, and I want to go and do something that will like, you know, help me deal with this shit. But it's just interesting to see because while we are aware that Rhea's mother is dead in the film, we don't necessarily get to see a little bit more of like that emotional side there. We get to see a lot about Rhea's family. We get to see their culture. We get to see their heritage. We get to see the family-run restaurant. The restaurant scenes would have to be like one of my favorite parts of this film, mainly because they were just all beautifully shot. I thought it was fantastic. But I feel like with the subject of Rhea and her mother, I really wish we got to see more of that emotional side with that right there. And I feel like we kind of did a bit because, you know, when Rhea ended up getting her song stolen in the film, we did get to see her get really upset about things. And you know, like, if you're grieving and something pisses you off, that's going to piss you off like 5 times more than it would if you was not grieving, okay? But Spin is very interesting because it's like your basic Disney princess type movie formula or Disney movie formula where somebody's close family member or friend dies and then everybody's just supposed to go on like it's normal. Which, yes, that is a part of death. People die and then you do have to go on about your day. But also, here's the thing when I notice when it comes to Disney, I really do wish they could be a little bit more realistic with their depictions of life at times, because not everything is going to be super duper sunshine and rainbow and all of us just ignoring that this thing that happened right here that has impacted our lives terribly happened. And that, it just frustrated me so much because I know a lot of times where people are dealing with like the death of a family member, especially if they were a close family member, they do have to go on about their day and whatnot and all of that. But it just frustrated me a little bit watching Spin. And mind you, I'm not about to be hard on this movie at all because it was directed by an Indian woman. It is literally one of the few DComs out here with a South Asian lead. I'm the last person that's going to be sitting on here hating on Spin. But it just kind of like reminded me of this ongoing issue of the way Disney portrays death, and I honestly wish they would, you know, be a little bit more raw when it comes to that subject. Now, the next Disney film I really do want to talk about has to be The Princess and the Frog, because The Princess and the Frog is also another movie I say that revolves around a death, and it would have to be the death of Tiana's father. Now, you're sitting here and you're probably thinking, how does The Princess and the Frog revolve around a death? Like, how does this entire movie revolve around a death? Mind you, first of all, there's like three fucking people that died in this damn movie, okay? Like, the fly died, the shadow man died. Did he even die, or did he just get taken to the other side? I don't fucking know. But The Princess and the Frog, we find out that the main reason Tiana wants to get her restaurant so bad has to do with the fact that that is what her dad wanted. That was her dad's dream. And because of that, she was like, you know what? I'm going to live that dream for him. I'm going to, give him what he wants. Now, I adore Tiana. I love her, but I realize that so much of her character has to do with, like, that entire strong black woman archetype that is very, very harmful and has hurt us so much over the years. But one thing about it that's extremely interesting to me is that we kind of don't necessarily know Tiana outside of her being, like, a chef, outside of her being a businesswoman, outside of her identity, outside of her wanting to live her father's dream. Now, why does this bother me so much compared to, like, other Disney princess movies and this and that and the third? Mind you, correct me if I'm wrong, but, like, Tiana is, like, the only Disney princess I say that's, like, employed. Like, I'm trying to, like, get it through my brain, but I was like, that's like another thing. Don't get me started. I have so many things I could say about The Princess and the Frog. I could talk about this movie for weeks, okay? But why does this kind of make me go and think like, what? Because let me tell you, The Princess and the Frog, while these are all the things that make up Tiana's character, her being so hurt by her father's death to the point where it literally impacted her life for pretty much ever, which is very understandable. I really wish we got to know her a little bit more. That's part of the reason why The Princess and the Frog frustrates me so bad, is because the movie kept focusing away from her so much. But also, it's just like she was a damn frog, like 75% of the film. There's just so much that I wish could have been done with Tiana's character. That's why I was so happy to find out that she was getting, like, her own animated show. And first of all, y'all was talking to me like I didn't know that she was getting the show. Baby, I knew since the day it was announced, okay? But it was just frustrating for me because it's like, it feels like it's taking forever for us to, like, get any kind of updates with the series. And we recently did get one where we found out a black woman is going to be up in the writer's room for that. And applaud that. I love that. But I feel like The Princess and the Frog's spinoff series that's going to focus on Tiana is basically gonna, like, fill in all those gaps of things that I really wish could have been handled a little bit better with the story. Because I said, outside of Tiana being a hard-working woman, outside of her wanting to, have this restaurant for her dad and all of that shit, I really would have loved to know Tiana a little bit more. Because I understand that death impacted her so much. And when I say I wanted to know about her a little bit more, I really wanted to know Tiana more, like, as a person, if that makes sense. Because something's telling me, mind you, not trying to be, like, headcanon and shit or nothing like that, but I was like, something's telling me that it's much more than her father's death that impacted her like that. I feel like there is something else there that Tiana has dealt with in her life that made her the way she is. Now, I know you're sitting here and you're thinking, why do you feel so strongly about Tiana's character? Well, let's take my favorite animated movie of all time and compare it to The Princess and the Frog, and that is Sleeping Beauty. That is one of my top 3 favorite movies ever made. Okay, now the princess in that movie is Aurora. The princess in Princess and the Frog is Tiana. Now, Aurora is what a lot of people would consider to be, like, the most boring Disney princess, which I completely understand. I get it. Because Aurora, the story surrounds her. The story is about people wanting to protect her, but she's boring. Tiana, on the other hand, She's not boring. And The Princess and the Frog just left the door open for so much to be desired with this one character. And I remember like when Tangled the animated series had gotten like, you know, announced and all that. I was just like, yay, Rapunzel's world is like getting explored. But I really want to know a little bit more about Tiana and why she acts the way she does and why is she like all the things that make her who she is. Because I was like, something's telling me that it's much more than just her dad dying. And it has to be, okay? The beginning of the movie was when she was really small, and then later on she's grown. Like literally in that time lapse, she's literally grown. So we know that there is so much that has happened between in that time. And like I said, I just wish we got to know her a lot more. Because the only thing that Tiana was like kind of limited to was just how her life was affected by her father's death, and that was just kind of it. We got to see like her love of cooking, all of this and then the third, but I never realized how strongly that was impacted by his death. And it's just, listen, I have so many ongoing thoughts and opinions when it comes to this film. And I don't want people to feel like I'm sitting here and I'm shitting on the movie, because I'm not. But it just left so many questions though, because it's obvious that Tiana is hurting. And it's obvious that death is hurting her so much in so many different ways, to the point where it kind of just shaped her identity, I'd say, as a whole. Because everything that had to do with the fact, her entire career literally was just based on the fact that she missed her dad. And that is so fucking sad, okay? That is so sad. Now, the last project that I really do want to talk to when it comes to the subject of like death and grief and whatnot, and the one I'd say that really made me like break down because I realized how much I could identify with these characters and whatnot, what happens to be the anime manga. It's really a manga because that anime I never can finish, called Gangsta. And you guys have seen me talk about it quite a bit on this channel and whatnot, like over this year. And like I said, I am a Warwick simp. I adore him. But part of that has to do with the fact that I can really relate to his character because of like things that have happened to him in his life and whatnot. But the story just kind of like goes to show you how all of these people are like hurting in different kinds of ways, but they're not necessarily trying to be all sunshine and rainbows about it. Because like I said, my problem with Disney is that they only kind of want to show like the few moments of when you get super duper sad about death, and then they just move on and they try to look at the positives of death, of trying to do something in somebody's name that has died or whatnot. And like I said, like with The Princess and the Frog, I was like, Tiana's literal career is affected by death. And y'all expecting us to think like this is supposed to be like super duper sunshine and rainbows? Hell no. Gangsta, over on the other hand, shows like the really ugly side of not just death, but also trauma and whatnot. And that is part of the reason why I say it's literally one of my top 5 manga animes of all time, because of like that rawness factor that is there. Because we get to learn a little bit more about Warwick. We get to learn more about his right-hand man, who is Nicholas. And then we really get to learn more about Alex along the way. And I say Alex is the character that really kind of like stuck with me the most, because I understood her story too much. Like, I understand it too much. And like I said, I'm not somebody, I don't want to go into detail about my pain. I don't want to get into detail about my trauma or whatnot. Mainly because I don't want to get on here and fucking cry. Because, no. Like I said, I'm doing this face cam because it'll take me way less time to get it out. But also, it's just, I noticed like a lot of her behaviors were similar to mine. Like, still now, I noticed that the way she would speak was similar to the way I was and whatnot. And so much of that has to do with like her trauma from being like SA along with the fact that, you know, her mom was dead. And those two things right there just kind of like, you know, like when you like watch something and you realize that you identify with the character for like really like negative reasons. I was just like, yeah, I don't understand her too much. That is me. That's me. And I'm like laughing because when I came to that realization that she was a lot like me, it really just made me realize that I just have so much to do when it comes to, you know, my growth and the way I, you know, want to heal and whatever. And part of the reason why it's just like with Alex, she's like finally in a position where I feel like she can heal. But so much of like my trauma with like SA and all of that shit was just me trying to, you know, act like it didn't happen. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to like open up about it. And I hate the fact that I was never really able to talk about that shit with my own mom. Like, I kind of hate that because I was just so scared to talk about this. Like she passed, and I wasn't even like there to talk about that with her. And like thinking like with Alex, I was like, there's probably so many things she wasn't able to talk about her mother with because she just didn't know how to go about it. She had bad trauma responses to a lot of things and whatnot. And she literally has to be one of my favorite anime characters ever. Mainly because when I found out Gangsta was written by a woman, it made sense. It's a seinen written by a woman. And I was like really, really, you know, I wouldn't really say I was happy to see this portrayal in like like in a manga, but I felt a bit like I felt seen. Cause I'm like, yeah, you're not alone. You're not the only person that is dealing with this and whatnot. And even though like I can't say the word because the video won't get demonetized and whatnot. It's like one thing a lot of people don't tell you about grief is like how it affects you in different ways. Like when I talked about Tiana and how death affected her entire life to the point with like, you know, affect her career. I never realized how much of like, you know, me not wanting to deal with like my trauma from SA and all that. I never really necessarily realized how much that like fucked me up until like I started having all these deaths in my family, and it was like bad memory after memory, nightmares about things that I haven't seen in years, nightmares about people that I have not seen in like forever. It's actually like terrifying, and I feel like that's the part of death that a lot of people don't want to talk about, and that's why I appreciate Gangsta so much. I'm like, can we get into the ugliness of how grief actually is? It's not us simply being sad that the person that we love is gone. It's much more than that. It causes you to act out. It causes you to do stupid things. It causes you not to get sleep at night. It causes you to be afraid to go to certain areas because they remind you so much of that person. It is much more than just being sad over somebody not being there anymore. And that is one thing that I wish a lot of people will understand when it comes to grief, and why I feel like we as a whole need to do much better about it when we talk about it. Even though Moesha get on my damn nerves when I'm watching the show, I do appreciate how we get to see her flaws and all through that, and we realize her mother's death heavily impacted so much of that. Even with Davy, because Davy, Davy, she be making me mad. But I appreciate that we do get to see the ugliness of how her father's death affected her. Like the entire thing about Davy not being able to walk, I wish we could see more portrayal like that, because there are literal days where I can't get out of bed. There are literal days where I can barely stomach much of anything. Like grief is much more than just being sad about somebody dying. And I wish people would get that. But yeah, just wanted to talk and, you know, get this off my chest a little bit. Like I said, this was just something that I wanted to talk about and get out and whatnot because, yeah, I did want to get on here and talk a little bit more about death, mainly because I noticed that when I posted like my last video talking about like how like death has affected me and whatnot, a lot of y'all in the comments were talking about that y'all recently had lost like loved ones and whatnot that passed away, and how that like impacted you and whatnot. And the main reason I posted this is just grief. Like I said, grief is something that I think we as a whole need to do better about when we talk about it. And yeah, damn, this was a dark ass video. I don't even know what to do. I don't even know if I should promote anything. It just doesn't feel appropriate. But I will talk about things that have helped me. I've talked about this before. I've been drawing a lot more, as I mentioned when I was talking about spin. I've been drawing a lot more. I started making like a cute little comic. Is the art perfect? No. Is my art perfect? Hell no, it's far from that. But I love my drawings. It reminds me a lot of like 90s drawings that I really like to look at when I would be reading like, you know, books, like picture books. And then when I would be looking at the Sunday newspaper and whatnot. My art makes me happy. That's all that matters. I've been like listening a lot to like some Japanese R&B music. That's another thing that I've been doing a lot to like cope and whatnot. I've been reading a lot more. Mainly been reading more because it keeps me off social media. So yeah, that's that. I've been journaling. I always recommend people get a journal. Even if you're not grieving, but you're dealing with some other things, get a journal, please. It helps out a lot. And also, I really do recommend like watching wholesome shows. I understand that at times we want things to have like substance or whatnot, but sometimes just watching something that is just mindless fun can help. And that show for me has been Kif. It's been Kif. My friends actually recommended Kif to me. And Kif, I adore it. It's funny. It's great. It's cute. If you need something to just like lighten your mood up, Kif is a good thing too. You don't have to go and watch something super duper dark all the damn time, okay? Okay, especially if it's something that has to do with death a lot, this shit is gonna pain you. That's why I was just like, why did I pick up the gangster manga knowing that this story was going to be of so much traumatic stuff? And the reason I picked it up is because like I feel like I understood these characters so much, and it made me feel like less alone, and it made me feel like seen. So yeah, I've always been the kind of person that runs to. Sorry, my camera cut off again, which means that I need to hurry up. But like I said, I'm that kind of person that has always ran towards like creativity when it comes to like needing like an escape and whatnot. And yeah, art is great. Art is amazing. Okay. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much all I gotta say. I don't even know why I cut the camera back on. Honestly, I needed to close it out. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I deeply do appreciate it. And have a good day, night, or whatever time of the day you're watching. I'm just thankful that you watched this video. Yeah. Y'all have a great one. Goodbye.